Okay. So today we will continue with the three aspects of the path teaching, the three principal aspects of the path teaching. So last week we covered the first aspect, which is known as the renunciation, and today we will be covering the second aspect, which is the bodhicitta. So bodhicitta and to be on the path to enlightenment, to be on the path towards liberation. Renunciation is the key, and you might also say renunciation is somewhat sufficient. So to be on the path and to be on the bodhisattva's path, to be on the path to enlightenment, there's a difference. To be on the path and to be on the path towards enlightenment, or as we talked last week, to merge with the path, to absorb into the path, and to be on the path and to be on the path towards enlightenment. There's a difference. There's a difference here. So by having the renunciation thought, renunciation attitude, if you like, one can be one can merge with the path. One comes into the path, but still one is not on the path towards enlightenment until one has the thought of enlightenment, which is known as bodhicitta. So for a Mahayana practitioner who is willing to get enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings, the second aspect is highly important, the bodhicitta. So that's what we are going to cover today. Okay. Now, so now we are reading through verse number 6. Verse number 6, the book. So it reads like this. Yet, if this renunciation is not embraced by the pure motivation of bodhicitta, so we talked about the importance of renunciation last week. So renunciation is very important. Renunciation is key to be on the path. But even if you have the renunciation, without renunciation, there is no question of one getting into the path. But even one is able to generate renunciation towards samsara. So renunciation here means renouncing the samsaric world. As we talked last week, we have renunciation towards different things in samsara. Renunciation on things in samsara and renunciation to samsara, of samsara, is a big difference. Renunciation of a certain thing in samsara means you want something better, but within the limits of samsara. Renunciation of samsara means you are totally fed up with the samsaric life, and you want to be liberated from samsara altogether. So that's the meaning of the pure renunciation, So ordinary renunciation, we have renunciation of, let's say, if you don't like coffee, then you have renunciation towards, you can renounce coffee very easily. But that doesn't mean, that is not a pure renunciation, because you are renouncing only a certain aspect of samsara. Coffee is a pleasant choice in samsara, among many other pleasant choices. Coffee is one of them. And so if you don't like coffee, then you can renounce coffee very easily. And actually, you may want to renounce coffee. Whenever people bring coffee towards you, you will want to renounce it, because it's bitter and other things like that. But if you are but if you are in order to renounce samsara altogether, renouncing one aspect of samsara is not efficient. So you may dislike coffee, but you may like other things in samsara, and you still get attached towards other things. So some pure renunciation means renouncing everything in samsara. Okay. Now the next, even if you have the pure renunciation, if that renunciation is not fortified by bodhicitta, then it's still not sufficient to get you to enlightenment. Because in order to by renouncing samsara, you will be out of samsara. But just because you want to be out of samsara, you may not necessarily want to get enlightenment, get Buddhahood. Because in order to get out of samsara, even the state of arhathood, arhat is sufficient, is enough. When you attain even though it's very highly difficult, but when you attain the state of samsara, when you attain the state of arhat, then you no longer have any disturbing thoughts within you. You no longer have any desires that disturb you, any resentment, none of that. So by getting arhathood, one is able to escape samsara, one is able to be liberated from samsara. So that is sufficient. But as someone who wishes to work for the sake of all the sentient beings, all the mother sentient beings, all the sentient beings who have been our mother, our parents, our loved ones, and so on and so forth, to whom we care immensely and to whom we want to look after, we need to attain enlightenment, to take care of them, to look after them. And for that, we need bodhicitta. So even though the renunciation is necessary for one to be on the path, for someone to be on the path of spirituality, it is important. It is one of the principal aspects of the path. But without renunciation, it will not be sufficient for one to be enlightened. So therefore, the pure motivation of bodhicitta, or what we call usually the Changjub Disem, which means the body-mind. Body meaning enlightenment, and the mind or the attitude towards attaining enlightenment. So that is necessary. So here the line reads, yet if the renunciation is not embraced by the pure motivation of bodhicitta, it will not become a cause for the perfect bliss of unsurpassed awakening. So unsurpassed awakening means Buddhahood. So because Buddha is a Sanskrit term for being awake. So not waking up from the ordinary sleep, but from the deep slumber of ignorance, deep sleep of ignorance. So that is the awakening. And even though there are many levels of realization, and all different levels of realizations are some sort of an awakening. It is a form of when you realize something in our ordinary day-to-day world. When you understand something, when you realize something, it's like an awakening. Then you have reckoning of what is going on, what is happening, what this is, and what this is about. So similarly, when you have realization in the spiritual path, it is a form of awakening. And of all the forms of, and in all the different types of awakening, the awakening of complete enlightenment, of Buddhahood, is the supreme one. There is no more, there's no awakening beyond that. So therefore, the awakening of Buddhahood is known as the unsurpassed awakening. So the third line reads, it will not become a cause for the perfect bliss of unsurpassed awakening. So the wise should generate supreme bodhicitta. So here wise means a wise person is someone who has the wisdom, and wisdom in the Buddhist mental science is regarded as something that is able to distinguish, is able to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. The discriminatory intelligence to discriminate what is right from what is wrong from what is right. That is known as the definition of wisdom. So when Lama Tsongkhapa said the wise one, the wise refers to someone with the wisdom to the penetrative wisdom to discriminate the right from the wrong, the right path from the wrong. So someone who is able to discriminate and distinguish that should generate the supreme bodhicitta. If you think, if you are able to discriminate Buddhahood from Arhathood and think that, oh, Arhathood is, even though Arhathood is a great achievement, but it's still not sufficient to liberate all sentient beings, and I need Buddhahood to be able to work for all the sentient beings. If you are able to discriminate that, then you should be able to discriminate that bodhicitta is an integral part of your practice in order to become a Buddha. And by doing so, one will work towards generating bodhicitta. So the last line says, so the wise should generate supreme bodhicitta. Now the next line reads, now the next line talks about why bodhicitta is important. So from the previous line, we know that the bodhicitta is the cause for the perfect bliss of unsurpassed awakening, or in other words, bodhicitta is the cause, the primary cause for Buddhahood. So why is Buddhahood important? Why isn't, let's say, the state of Arhathood sufficient? Because when you attain the state of Arhathood, all your troubles are gone. All your, the troubles of our everyday life, everything, all the problems are gone. So why should we strive for something more difficult? Arhathood is so difficult by itself. So why should we strive for something more difficult, for something called the Buddhahood? So for that comes the next line, which is, so beings are swept, so I'm going to read from the next line. Beings are swept along by the powerful current of the four rivers. Their karma, so difficult within the iron darkness. Okay. Actually, what the telling us is that all the beings were trapped in samsara, trapped in the samsara, and the samsara is not something filled with all the pleasantries. It's filled with so many negative things, so many the four rivers. So the four rivers is a reference to the four kinds of suffering. So there are different types of sufferings we talk about. Sometimes we talk about three types of suffering. Sometimes we refer to the four types of suffering. So when we normally say four types of suffering is a reference to the suffering of birth, the suffering of aging, becoming old, and the suffering of sickness and the suffering of death. So Ge Ga Na Chi, which is birth, aging, sickness, and dying or death. So this is like a river in the sense the river does not stay. The river always runs. Similarly, our birth, our aging, our sickness, and our death always runs, is always coming, is always going, is always running, is always in circulation. Thing ends. Even death is not the final answer. When you die, of course, dying is unpleasant in itself, but when you die, then you are born again. There is nowhere to escape from death. Normally, people think death is the ultimate answer, commit suicide and all this kind of thing. Of course, life is difficult, so sometimes to escape that difficulty in life. But in reality, even death is not the answer. There is something beyond that, which is, by beyond doesn't mean something greater or something better. By beyond, I mean we're just coming back to square one. After death, birth comes. And we all know by birth, when a baby is born, the baby is crying, the baby needs food, shelter, clothing, everything. If it's a human baby, then until the baby is like 4 or 5 years old, it cannot look after itself. And so by birth itself, from the very beginning, which is the birth, problem starts, misery starts. Then, not to talk about aging. Actually, right after the moment we were born, we have started aging. So there's, in English, they tell you, how old are you, right? So it means every time you age, you are getting older. And maybe that's why they don't like, in the Western world, they don't like to be asked, how old are you? Which is not a big thing in the Asian society, because we are asked differently. What is your age? That is how we ask, instead of how old are you? But in reality, as rude as it may seem, but it's the reality. Every time your age changes, you are getting older. And then the sickness, for example, the pandemic. So no need to explain about that. And death, when we die, we depart. We leave from this, even though we are not going forever, we are just leaving. We are changing the body. It's like changing the clothes. But we change this body. We change our identity. And then we become. We are born as a non-human or someone else. We change our identity completely. Or even if you are born as a human being, you will not be reborn as the same person. Your face will be different, your appearance will be different, your talents will be different, everything will be different. So the whole identity is different. So therefore, people don't want to die. Many people don't want to die. Many of us don't want to die. We fear death, because death means departing. And it's not the body itself that we have to depart with, but the identity, the things that is associated with the body. That is what we are afraid of. With this body, with this face, there is the bank account, there is the wife, there is the husband, there is the family. All these are identified, associated with this identity, this face, this body, not with the mind. And next life you were born as a dog. All your associations will be different. Your parents are different. Your house is different. Your livelihood is different. Everything is different. So when we have settled in quite well in the realm that we are in, for example, in the human life, and we don't want to depart from all this comfort zone that we have built for ourselves. So it is actually the fear of departing from that comfort zone, not exactly the death itself per se that we are afraid of, but the departing of all the things that we are associated with. That is what we are afraid of. Because the moment you are dead, all these association, all this identification will be gone as well. And that is what we are afraid of. And that is why we don't want to die. So the four rivers: birth, aging, sickness, death. For the four rivers. So it's like a flooding river, comes, runs quickly, swiftly, thoroughly, and there is no distinction between poor and there's no distinction between a Westerner or Oriental, Asian or male or female. Everyone has to go through these four rivers. So therefore, when you look at these things, all the sentient beings have to swim upwardly, upstream. Okay. Let me try to get it. So okay, so where did you guys lost me?
You stop at when you look at things, all the people streaming up. Stop at that.
Oh, okay. That's good. Okay, so this is the first line of the second verse. Okay, so yeah, you can translate from here. I will try to reconnect. So even though it's like swimming upstream, sentient beings swimming upstream through the four rivers, the four rivers of aging, birth, death, and sickness. But we are still stuck there. We are still bound by the chains of our karma. And in order to let go of the karma, we first need to let go of our self-grasping attitude, which is again rooted or chained towards the ignorance of not realizing the ultimate truth, ultimate reality. So karma is like a debt. Until you pay off the debt, you always have to, keep paying your debt until you until you finish off paying the debt. So before we are able to pay off one section of karma, we commit more karma, positive or negative, and we are again stuck in samsara. We keep getting stuck in samsara. So it's like before you were able to pay off your previous debt, you are borrowing more money. So you keep you keep on getting in debt forever. So in order to get out of that circle of paying off debt and that circle of debt, one needs to get rid of the two things. One is the self-grasping attitude, and the other is the ignorance of not realizing the truth, ultimate reality. And for the later, for the ignorance not realizing ultimate truth, we have the wisdom, which we will cover next week. And for in order to get rid of the self-grasping attitude, we have to generate, we have to practice and try to generate bodhicitta, which in contrast to the self-grasping attitude, bodhicitta is an open-minded attitude, open-hearted attitude. And so therefore we need that. When we are able to generate the bodhicitta, it will be able to dispel the self-grasping attitude. When we have the wisdom realizing the ultimate truth, nature of all phenomena, then the thick darkness of ignorance will also be blown away. So therefore, let me read it through. Ensnared within the tightly bound by the chains of their karma, so difficult to undo, ensnared within the iron trap of their self-grasping, and enshrouded in the thick darkness of ignorance. This is the verse number 7. Okay, so now this the 4 rivers, the sufferings of the 4 rivers. If this is one time, then even as terrible and as tormenting as it may seem, it is something bearable because it happens in our life, and then from then onwards, everything is eternally happy. But the thing is not like that. Whatever keeps happening, the 4 rivers, as the name suggests, it's a river, so it's always running. So therefore, the 4 rivers keep running and running and running. It comes back, it keeps circulating. The river goes to the ocean, and from the ocean it evaporates into the clouds, air to the clouds, through the air, and then from the rainfall it yet again fills the rivulets, and then through the rivers it again goes to the ocean and comes back. So it's an never-ending cycle. So this is what the verse number 8, the next line, talks about. Again and again they are reborn in limitless samsara. So samsara, unless we deal with the 3rd and 4th line of last verse, which is the self-grasping attitude and the ignorance, ultimate ignorance. Unless we deal with these 2 things, the samsara will always be limitless. Samsara will always be infinite. Samsara will never end. So again and yet again, they are reborn in limitless samsara and constantly tormented by the 3 forms of suffering. So the 3 forms of suffering is the samsara, suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and suffering of the all-pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. So this is the condition, the current condition. This is the condition of all your mother sentient beings, all your mothers, all your parents, all your loved ones. So in order to, and one must contemplate on their plight and generate supreme bodhicitta. So we will talk about what the 3 sufferings are later. So by thinking of 3 forms of suffering is a category of suffering. So if you'd like to know, we can talk about that later. But the sufferings, even if we don't categorize our sufferings, we all know that we live through misery. Of course, there's a lot of good things and pleasurable moments in samsara, but at any given moment, there is misery. And we usually call it, oh, this is life, ups and downs is part of our life. And then we just, ignore it. It's true that ups and downs is the part of our life, In a sense, if you are willing to live in samsara, then this will always be our part of our life. But the question is not to be in that box, not to be boxed in, to come out of that box called samsara. And in order to do that, we need the tools to open that box, the tools of wisdom and tools of bodhicitta. So think of all the conditions of your mother sentient beings. Do you think it is okay to leave them as they are? All the people that you loved and cared for in this world are also going through the same form of some suffering. And even though all the people that were close and related to you in your previous life and their life before that and all that, though you may not know them, though you may not recognize them, but they were also your loved ones once. Once upon a time, they were the most important people in your life, and they are also going through the same form of suffering, if not more. So all these people that you love, you care, or do you want to leave them all in misery while you enjoy the, let's say, the blissful moment of an arhathood? Will you be able to do that? So this is a question that you have to ask yourself. If not, then it's time to generate bodhicitta. Now, coming into culmination, coming to the conclusion, bodhicitta and renunciation, or the form of bodhicitta that we are talking about just now, bodhicitta, that form of bodhicitta is also sometimes called the great compassion. So the great compassion, or the bodhicitta, and renunciation is considered the two sides of the same coin. Two sides of the same coin. Both of the same coin. When you contemplate on all the suffering that's going on through the world, that all the sufferings that you are going through, you have been through, and then you will have to go through all the sufferings, and then think of escaping that. That is renunciation. You are remorsed by all the things that is going on. And when you shift the focus from yourself to others, just like myself, all the sentient beings are going through this, have been through this, and will go through all this, and I cannot stand while all the sentient beings are suffering like that. When you have such a thought, then it is shifted into bodhicitta from renunciation. It's sometimes also referred to as the great compassion. Technically speaking, there is a difference between great compassion and bodhicitta, but in general, they are kind of similar, very, very similar. So when you shift your focus from your own self sufferings of your own to the sufferings of others, it turns into bodhicitta. So bodhicitta, the potential to generate bodhicitta is within you, just as the potential to generate renunciation. If you want to escape from samsara, if you have that within you, if you hate samsara, you are fed up with samsara, if you really want to come out, escape samsara, if you have that willpower, if you have that within you, if you have that commitment within you, then you also have the same willpower to generate bodhicitta, to work for others, to eliminate the sufferings of all sentient beings. That is also really good, because bodhicitta and renunciation are the two faces or two sides of the same coin. So, okay, that's all for today, and Questions?
Rinpoche, we have a question. I'll read the
Phần câu
question.
hỏi đáp.
Right? Yeah.
Prostrate to Rinpoche. Even if we have a strong desire to renounce everything in this life, the responsibilities with our family is also very strong. Can you please give us a suggestion to practice renunciation without avoiding this life's responsibilities?
So it's a very difficult question. It's a topic. Monks don't have a immediate family, as in kids and that kind of thing. So even though we can talk a lot about how to detach and this and that, but it's a different background than from someone with family. Of course, we have family in the sense of brothers and parents, but normally when we talk about familial responsibilities, we are talking about your own children and things like that, which the monks does not have. But jokes aside, so there are two ways of looking at this thing, from my own perspective. One is, if you are serious practitioner, like extremely serious, all you want to do is to get enlightenment because you are extremely fed up with samsaric life and nothing, get rid of that, but still you have a lot of responsibilities, and so you still have to look after that, and all these responsibilities come in the way for your practice, in which case you have to renounce your family even, which happened in the case of Siddhartha Gautama, Lord Buddha. So he got married, he has a wife, he even met a kid, but he left everything, his parents, his wife, his child to be born, everything he left. So from a worldly perspective, he's like a deserter. He deserted his family, he deserted his responsibilities, his wife was pregnant, and his kid, a future kid. So everything he left. So he's a very irresponsible man. But if you look at it from the long-term perspective, Buddha Shakyamuni, Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama was ultimately fed up with, because if you know the story of Buddha, he saw the four rivers, the aging, the sickness, the death, and all that. But he was really fed up with all this. And his father was protecting him from all the unpleasantries that's happening in the world. And he knows there's a facade, there's something illusory, and he wants to escape all of that. So his desire, if you like, or maybe the wish, maybe desire is not the right word. Anyway, the wish to attain enlightenment, the wish to escape samsara is so strong, so serious. So in his case, he left everything and he went to the woods in search of a teacher and then did meditation and gained Buddhahood. That is one thing. And for many of us, especially many of you whom are lay people, this may seem like an extreme thing. If all of you were to leave your family this very moment, then a lot of things are going to go wrong. Not just from your family's side, but from your own side, you do not have the sufficient fuel to go for that long journey. First, you need to train yourself. Your mind should be quite stable. As I said in day one, we talk about the hair-like renunciation. Hair-like renunciation is not strong. A strong wind comes and it blows away to another part. It blows away to another corner of the earth. Because you have some family problem, you have some money problem, you have some this and that issue with your partner, you want to escape samsara. You think you want to escape samsara. You think the Dharma life is for you. and then you leave, you would come into the monastery or become a nun or whatever, or come to the seclusion as a reclusive. You come to the hermitage to do meditation, and then the same problem persists because you're not equipped. You're mentally not equipped. You now have issue not with your partner, but with your fellow nuns and monks, with your teacher even. My teacher doesn't know how to teach this and that part. Oh, my teacher is looking at me in a certain way. Maybe he's, so like that kind of thing. So if your mind is not stable and sufficiently capable of plunging into the path that Siddhartha Gautama did when he escaped from his family that night, then we are not yet ready to leave everything aside. In which case, we have to walk a middle way path. And I think that is about, anyways, we are thinking of that. And in that case, family responsibilities should not be given up. Okay, because that does not suit us. We are not capable. We are not mentally capable of doing that yet. To give up our family. If you are mentally capable of plunging into the path of enlightenment as a serious practitioner, then giving up family is appropriate for you, for only these kind of people. That's why there is the topic of the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope individuals in the Lamrim. But for many of us, it's not the right moment, right time to do that. So we should not give up our family, but at the same time strive towards practicing as much as we can. So there is, within Buddha's life story, within the life story of many great masters, or also in text, many practices to follow. Do as much as you can. So in the practices, they talk about giving up attachment, giving up hatred, all this. So everything is not possible. If you cannot give up attachment, then you cannot give up anger or resentment. Because if somebody harms your family, towards which you are attached to, then anger will come automatically. As long as you have the self-grasping attitude, right? As long as you have the self-grasping attitude, you will always be attached to your family, which is part of your love circle. Your self-grasping attitude, you love your family and your partner and so on and so forth. And these people are part within the circle of your self-grasping attitude. So your self-grasping attitude will make sure that you're always grasping, you're always entrenched in that attachment. And as long as you are attached to something, when that object towards which you are attached to is taken away, is put in harm's way, then anger will come automatically. There's no question of that. So what we have to do is do as much as we can to lower our attachment. And in order to lower our attachment, it's impossible unless we curb that self-grasping attitude within. Me, I'm so important. As long as I'm the most important person in the whole universe, then my family, my partner, my brother, my sister, my friends will be the most important people in the world after you. And this thing will continue. So self-grasping attitude is the key here. I mean, is the main opponent, is the main thing to tackle. As you curb your self-grasping attitude, then your heart will open more and more. and your attachment towards your family will also decrease. It doesn't mean you will no longer love your family. You will still love them, but you are no longer attached. Attached is not a nice word, right? Attached. It means it's change. Attachment is a change. So loving, you will be, once you are able to decrease your attachment towards people you love, you will be able to what is known as love freely. As long as you have attachment, you are loving with dependence. You are loving someone by depending upon them. Once your attachment is curbed, gone, or lowered, decreased, then you'll be able to love freely. And that love will not bind you, but actually make you independent, make you free. And that free love is more blissful than the binding love that we are enjoying, that we are supposedly enjoying right now. So in order to curb that self-grasping attitude, we need to practice bodhicitta. Self-grasping attitude is a narrow-minded, self-centered, inward-looking attitude. Bodhicitta is open-minded, open-hearted, outward-looking attitude, and that is what we have to try to procure in our practice. Okay, now we go for the dedication. So we have the dedication for His Holiness, Miss Yan. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we go from the beginning. For the So I've added the long life prayer for His Holiness. So His Holiness, as the representative of all the great masters and teachers who are working for all the sentient beings, teaching the Dharma and shining the light towards enlightenment. So with that prayer, you can also think of your individual teachers as well.